All right, everybody. We thanks for sticking around. We'll do our second section now. Hopefully my audio is a little better. I apologize. My microphone got unplugged there. So this is a QR code. If you're interested in joining the Arizona Health Professionals for Climate Action, please feel free to use that. And we'll keep putting that access point in the chat. It's free to join us. And who are we? Why, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? So for those that don't know, we are a state chapter of the Medical Societies Consortium for Climate and Health, which is 57 different medical societies coming together to magnify their effect working the climate change and human health perspective. And so we are a separate organization, but we do work a lot with the Medical Societies Consortium. So it's kind of a partnership that we have. That is a QR code if you want to access the Medical Societies Consortium website. Maybe you're moving to a different state. They link other state chapters there and have good resources. So maybe you're just wanting some more educational components or things that you want to build up your knowledge base. That's a great place to go. In terms of what do we do and what kind of things are going on with our organization, we have a couple aspects that we work as part of our education and advocacy. One, we have a sustainable healthcare committee run by Yvonne Huckleberry, who's on the call. And she and this committee are working with other healthcare organizations around the state. And we're looking to decrease the carbon footprint of healthcare, right? Healthcare's carbon footprint probably makes up 12% of total carbon footprint when you think about all of the fuel emissions, the gloves, the cleaning, all of that stuff. How can we decrease that? So we've worked with like St. Joe's and Phoenix, Banner Medical Center South here in Tucson, and some other, we're trying to work with El Rio as well, a community clinic here in Tucson, to work on sustainable options. We have a research committee led by Noah Tolby, and we're looking to do some research and get into things like we're looking to do surveys regarding contraceptive prescriptions from the emergency room and what emergency physicians have as barriers to that. We're looking to heat-related deaths and heat-related illness burden on our healthcare system, as well as air pollution and our particulate matters outside our emergency medicine bays compared to around the town. So seeing what our patients may be feeling. Policy action. So we work with local, federal, and state senators and legislators, as well as policy and decision makers. We've met with them for the last couple of years, whether that's helping to move federal climate policy or local climate policy. We are currently we're working with Eugene LeVar, who is our chief heat officer on heat related topics. So working that policy component. We also have local involvement. A lot of our sponsors here today are some of the local groups we work with and try to amplify each other's message. They're doing the hard work, but we can help be that trusted voice and speak to the health aspects for their organization. Education-wise, this is part of our education component. We're also trying to talk to different groups in the community and people. And then we even were able to get a medical student curriculum at the University of Arizona for a fourth-year student electives. And we're actually trying to work on a federal level, trying to change and bring climate and environmental-based teaching to all residencies for resident physicians as part of their training. And then media-wise, we have worked in the media. We've talked to different reporters. We've been a part of some Route Zero press events, and we've written some op-eds and recently expanded our LinkedIn YouTube presence and have a whole new website that we got going this year. So it's a great place for basic education as well as linking to events and solutions that Ed was talking about. And part of some of the work that we're doing is working and networking with other health professionals in the state. So I'm going to let Jen Clanahan talk about how Mountain Mamas is taking care of an Arizona health professional action call. Jen?
Great. Thanks so much, Brian. Appreciate it. Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Clanahan. I'm with an organization called Mountain Mamas. We are a group of parents and really anybody who is concerned about the state of the planet that our kids will be inheriting. And there is an existing group, the Arizona Healthcare Professionals Advocacy Group, that we are going to be essentially helping to run and to help staff. And I know some of you on this call are actually already participating in this organization, which is great, but we wanted to make sure everybody knew about it and welcome you and invite you to participate if you would like. Excuse me, the organization is really to do some of what we're doing today, and that's to connect healthcare professionals and their trusted voice with issues that are and decisions that are being made day to day in Arizona that will impact public health, clean air, clean energy, and climate. And so we as staff will be able to, will track these decisions for you. We know you guys have day jobs and you're not able to monitor all the decisions that are happening out there. So we do that for you. And then on this monthly call, we can let you know, hey, here are the opportunities for you to make your voice heard and to make an impact on these decisions. And that can happen in a lot of ways. That can be that perhaps you testify at a public meeting or you attend a meeting with us of decision makers. It might mean sending a letter to the editor of the local paper. It could be writing an op-ed. There's lots of different ways to get involved in that, and there'll be different opportunities for different decisions and given everybody's different level of comfort as well. Basically, we just are helping you get that trusted voice out there. We meet monthly and welcome everyone to join that call. And if you're not able to join the call, there will be a newsletter as well. And I've put my email address there. I'll drop it in the chat as well. Anybody who's interested in getting the information to sign up for our newsletter list and get the information about the calls can just reach out to me. That's it. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. So what we're going to cover in the second half is looking at, this is an election year. There will be ballot decisions this fall. And so what are the most impactful ballot decisions or aspects that affect us here in Arizona? So that's what we're going to focus on, these kind of 4 areas. There probably are others that could, but given time and highest yield and value and impact, that's why we're going to talk about these. So let's start first with Eve Shapiro, who's going to talk about the Arizona Corporation Commission.
Thanks, Brian. The Arizona Corporation Commission, a lot of people in the state don't really know what it does, but its primary job is to regulate energy sources, solar, wind, coal, natural gas, and nuclear, in terms of distribution and rates. It also has control over water, but only in terms of private water wells and wastewater. It also does incorporating businesses, securities regulation, pipeline safety. But the thing that we're most concerned about in this issue is the first item, regulating energy sources. Next. So this is another description.
So what is Arizona Corporation Commission? My name is Ryan Randazzo. I'm a business reporter for the Arizona Republic, and I'm going to try and answer that for you in less than 2 minutes. The Corporation Commission is 5 elected officials. They represent the entire state, so you get to vote for them, although very few people do. They're at the bottom of the ballot. Their primary job is to regulate electric and water and gas utilities in the state of Arizona. So when a big company like Arizona Public Service Co. wants to increase rates or make any significant changes, they have to ask permission from the Corporation Commission. There's about 250 people that work for the commission. There's financial experts, there's attorneys. They'll look at those type of applications and make a judgment call on whether or not it's appropriate. The staff will make a recommendation to the 5 elected officials who then act like judges and decide whether or not to grant that rate increase. The Corporation Commission also does all sorts of other things. They regulate the incorporation of the companies in the state. They oversee pipeline safety. They oversee railroad crossings in the state. But their biggest duty is to review these rate cases from major utilities and determine whether or not they're in the public interest. They're created by the Constitution. There's only 7 states that have a constitutionally created commission, and they're one of only 13 states where the commissioners are elected. In most states, the Public Utilities Commission or Public Service Commission, those folks are usually appointed by the governor, but we're one of the few states that gets to elect those folks. So why should an everyday Arizonan care about the Corporation Commission? Well, those 5 elected officials can have a huge impact on the monthly bills that utility customers pay. They not only decide whether or not a rate increase is appropriate, but they also serve in a legislative capacity where they create rules that utilities have to follow. For example, they created the rule in 2006 that 15% of the electricity from electric companies has to come from renewable resources such as solar and wind. So if anyone has questions about the Corporation Commission or utilities or business in general in Arizona, I encourage you to reach out to me via email or my Twitter account.
So thanks. So that video focused on rate to individual people, but obviously what we're concerned about is the impact of the Corporation Commission on climate, in particularly in our state. So I just copied the mission statement from the Corporation Commission, and the first line is to ensure safe, reliable, and affordable utility services. Currently, the Corporation Commission has 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And I wanted to go over some of the recent decisions that have been made by the Corporation Commission to give everyone an understanding of why I feel it's going in the wrong direction and how we can make it go in the right direction. So next slide. So this is a busy slide, but basically, just a few weeks ago, the Arizona Sierra Club sued the Corporation Commission for its decision to eliminate environmental reviews for most new methane gas-fired power plants. So there had been a committee vote that would require UNS Electric, which is a company I think in outside of Phoenix, that would have to obtain a certificate of an environmental impact. And the Corporation Commission said, no, actually, they don't have to do that. So the Sierra Club sued because they said that's actually illegal. And I like this quote from Sandy Bear, who's the head of the Arizona chapter of the Corporation Commission. She said, when the commission voted to exempt this project from environmental review, it overturned the existing environmental review process for gas plants that has been followed for decades, setting a dangerous precedent. So it's up to the Superior Court to correct the commission's catastrophic decision that would have detrimental impacts for our air, water, and our communities. So that's the very recent decision. What's some other actions? Well, recently, the Corporation Commission asked the staff to prepare a recommendation to repeal the Renewable Energy Standard and Energy Efficiency Standard. There are some requirements that have been met, but it does send a bad message about Arizona's commitment to renewables. That little clip that you saw said that they did say that they would have to, clean energy would have to comprise 15% of our energy needs, I think by the year 2030. And if anyone thinks that's a reasonable number, I'm not so sure about that. So obviously we need to have clean energy be a much larger percent of our meeting our energy needs. They also, as people know, that on number of Native American reservations, there were some coal plants that were closed for economic reasons. And those APS, Arizona Public Services, had supported funding for economic transition to give those Native Americans jobs in other industries because of the closing of the plants. The Corporation Commission approved 0 funding for economic transition for communities affected by those plant closures. Next slide. Okay, so who's running in this current race? There are 3 Democrats, Eleni Aguilar, Jonathan Hill, and Joshua Polachek. In a recent debate, those 3 came out strongly in favor of solar and other renewable sources, and they were critical of rate increases which did not take into account the impact on some communities. The Republicans in that debate, Renee Lopez, Leah Marquez Peterson, and Rachel Walden, favored a more diversified mix, including fossil fuels. Now, we can't be partisan in this discussion, but that's why I'm educating people about what these people represent and what they would do as policy. So this is from Joshua Polachek's website, and it goes over his strong commitment to solar, wind, and battery storage to meet our energy needs. And he also mentions that bringing energy production home will lead to thousands of good jobs in rural and urban parts of the state. Plus, it saves millions of gallons that go as steam to spin the turbines of gas and coal plants. Here's from Rachel Walden's website. She opposes government-mandated climate goals and energy investments, believing they undermine free market principles and prioritize ratepayers last, and that Arizona must maintain a diverse energy portfolio to ensure predictable, abundant, and well-distributed resources. So all of the above energy approach, diversifying energy sources. Next. So this race is really important, and unfortunately, most people are not aware of the importance of this race. So I think we would like everyone to please get out the word and make sure people will often vote top of the ballot, but they don't vote down ballot. And this, as that little clip mentioned, is one of the lower items on the ballot. So it is really important that we encourage people to go down ballot and vote for this race. There are things that people can do if they want to work on it, and they can contact me. I can put my email in the chat to find out about how you might volunteer to make phone calls to raise awareness about this issue. So let me stop there and see if there's any questions.
I had a question, Eve.
Yeah.
I think when you showed one of the first decisions, I think is that the ACC had voted to not have any review of any of the gas plants, and then I think Sandy Barr came to say that it was illegal and sued. I'm just curious, how is that illegal? Is there a law in place that says that that is illegal? Just wanted to clarify on that. Thank you.
I'm pretty sure that part of their mission is to oversee that aspect of our energy. So by saying we're hands off, was saying that they weren't fulfilling their obligation. As you saw what their mission statement is, to provide a reliable energy, and obviously that's not fulfilling the mission by saying we're hands off on this topic.
I mean, mission is different than an actual law, right? So just because you say you have a mission, I'm just curious from a legal perspective, how does this stand up in court? That's why I'm like, asking this. So I certainly am on the side of, having reviews, but just wondering how that's going to play out.
I would have to look into the exact legal argument on it, but I think they probably have strong opinions on that, because they do have legal representation that are obviously saying this is a case that's worth bringing to court. But I can find out about that and get back to you.
Thank you, Eve.
Yeah, Vivian, I'd add that most times when there's big construction projects, there's an environmental impact that's required by law. It either falls underneath the public health department or the environmental agencies. And basically, from what I understand from the quote, was that they just removed that requirement when that particular power entity wanted to add another gas-fired plant near one they already had in place. It just gives,
that's correct. And they weren't looking at the impact, the methane impact of that plant. which would
Mhm.
be not fulfilling their legal responsibilities.
Mark, you have a question?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank Dr. Shapiro for her comments. I'm a retired physician in Tucson, and I've been helping a little bit with the Greater Tucson Climate Coalition's ACC public education campaign. Kind of a similar goal. We're trying to encourage voters to vote in the general election and to be sure to vote for all three of the open positions on the ballot. Looking back at the 2020 general election, of the over 3.3 million votes cast by voters for the presidency, over 430,000 of those voters did not vote all the way down ballot, did not vote for the ACC. And furthermore, if you look at those who did vote for the ACC in 2020, of approximately 160 to 170,000 only voted for one of the three open positions. So it's really crucial to get people to turn out for this election. And as Dr. Shapiro said, to look down ballot, particularly to vote for this very important race. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Eve. With that, any other questions? Go ahead and put them in the chat. I think Eve can answer those. I'm going to go on to our next topic. Next one we're going to chat through is Prop 139, Right to Abortion Initiative. I don't know if anyone's heard of this. It may be a new thing, but in general, so this is obviously a touchy subject. We are not going to get into religious or political components of this, but just saying what it is and then tying it to health and climate. So this measure will be a constitutional amendment that would amend the Arizona Constitution and establish the fundamental right to abortion in the state of Arizona. And it may not interfere with before the point of fetal viability. So for fetal viability, we're looking at 24 weeks because any child that comes out before 24 weeks cannot survive even with our medical technology by themselves. So that's where that comes in. A vote yes on this would establish and support that constitutional right for abortion in the state, and a vote no would oppose the right or not establish a fundamental right to abortion in the state of Arizona. How is this related to climate and health? And I think this is, when you talk about more sensitive issues, I think relating it to health and climate is a way to bring it up in a nonpartisan, charged way. So when we look at abortion in general is an aspect of family planning. And we talk family planning, we are talking about the empowerment of women to have children when they want to and when they are ready to. And why is this empowerment of women to have children when they want to important? Well, it has huge public health outcomes. So women that have children when they are ready and when they want to will have a lower infant mortality rate. They'll have a lower maternal mortality rate. The women will have increased earning power and economic security. Mom's education levels will go up. For the child, they're going to have lower chances of a preterm labor or preterm with birth defects, lower birth weights. The children will actually have improved educational and social outcomes for the child. So a lot of big public health outcomes are important part of empowering women for family planning. When we say, well, is this an applicable thing to the United States? Do we need to worry about family planning? The answer is yes. About 45% of pregnancies in the United States are unintended. So that's a high percentage of pregnancies that would be affected by this. And you say, is this achievable? Like, we're here in the United States, can we do this? Well, Project Drawdown gives a great story about Iran when they had an issue in the 1990s. Women were having large numbers of children with a high infant mortality rate, a lot of maternal mortality associated and morbidity. And they actually got together, the clerics, the health officials, the government officials, and public community sectors. And they brought it together and they said, we need to work on family planning in our country. And as they educated the public about this, they had huge decreases in some of these high mortality, morbidity rates for women and children. And so that was a big public win. So if they can do it in Iran, family planning is definitely something I think we can do in the United States. And then we say, okay, well, how does this relate to climate? Well, if you think of like a an IPAT equation, so this is climate impact or human impact is derived from population times affluence times technology. Easily, we talk about technology, right? I want a more efficient heat pump. I want a more efficient car. I'm going to do little things to change technologically. That's an easy conversation to have to decrease human impact. Affluence is a little bit harder, right? You can't tell someone, well, don't go make money. That's bad. Be poor because then you'll have less of a climate impact. That's probably not going to work too well. And population's another hard aspect. Tell people not to have kids or get rid of the population because then there's going to be an impact. But family planning allows for populations that are intended and wanted for women. So that's how it can kind of impact, right? Less carbon footprints or less footprints leads to less carbon footprints. So it's a way that you can tie some of these issues back to empowerment of women for family planning and relate them to climate health. So that's just a brief tie of this proposition, and I'll take any questions on this. Cool. Well, we will go on. Seeing no questions. Let's see. I think Vivian, do you write anything? I say.
Yeah, I just wrote that
Yeah.
in states that have more restrictive abortion laws in place, that it's attracting less medical residents. And we do know that medical residents tend to stay in the state that they train in. So while these abortion laws may seem that it's very prescribed, it does further ultimately affect general health of people in the state and accessing medical care. So that's just kind of like one of the downstream effects of that. So just wanted to share that. Thanks.
I think that's a great point. And there's less, you'll see a lot of the OBGYN and family medicine docs that do deliver and do maternal health and deliver children are leaving states. Texas has had an exodus of these docs because of restrictive practice laws that have gone into place. So I think that's not just the trainees, but even those that are established have migrated and moved. So you see this doctor and provider migration to other places because of this. Cool. All right, I'm going to turn it over now to Pat Van Manen, and she's going to talk about the Central Arizona Conservation District Board.
Thanks, Brian. And the Central Arizona Water Conservation District Board is a mouthful, and I'm not sure if many people have heard of it. It's another one of those down ballot votes like the Corporation Commission that Eve talked about, but as important. And oftentimes people don't know about it because they actually call it the CAP or the Central Arizona Project. So I'll use CAP because it's easier to say and more familiar with folks. And it does really apply to only 3 of the counties in Arizona. So if you're not in Maricopa, Pima County or Pinal County, you may never have heard of it, but hopefully you'll be willing to listen to this and share with your friends and colleagues and family that live in those counties so they make sure they vote when they have individuals on the board that represent their county and that they can vote for them. And I put the website on the first slide as well, just so that you have it, and I'll have it later on as well. But the next slide you see here now is just the mission of the CAP and the purpose of their work. And the CAP was founded in 1968, and it was put in place when President Johnson signed the Colorado River Basin Project Act. And there's an upper and a lower basin. We're part of the lower basin, but it was really funded to address Colorado River water and the need for it within the states around it. As a result, it created the canals that we see around Phoenix and Tucson, and it really provides 80% of Arizona residents with water. And importantly, especially now that we've been in this extremely lengthy drought, it reduces our dependence on groundwater usage, and especially for agricultural uses. The construction of CAP started in 1973 and it took 20 years. So not until the 90s did it get completed in Pima. The district and the board were created to provide Arizona a means to run the CAP once it was built, and also to repay the federal government for the reimbursable costs of the construction. So part of the water fees we pay and part of some of our property taxes help repay the federal government. And it was about $4 or $6 million back when they started building it over those 20 years that we're still repaying today. Next slide. This shows a good map of the CAP system, and it delivers about 6 million Arizonans with water. And again, I mentioned it serves Maricopa, Pinal, and Pima counties. The other counties receive their water through other sources. For example, SRP controls a lot of the water and provides it in our rural and northern parts of the state. The CAP carries water from Lake Havasu near Parker, and it actually moves the water 2,900 feet in elevation. So it actually pumps the water up in its process to get it to and through the whole system. So this is a real interesting map. And again, I'll provide their website, but there's a lot of information and a lot of really great detail if you really want to know all the engineering and the different components. I initially thought for years that it was just the canal system, but as you can tell from this map, there's, pumping stations and reservoirs and many different components to the system that's managed by the board. And speaking of the board, next slide, please. The board was set up in 1971. That was when the first group was appointed and then elected thereafter. And it was as a result that they were going to start building it in 1973. These are nonpartisan positions, so you won't see if they're Democrat, Republican, but most of the time you can figure it out pretty easily. And it's popularly elected, which means we get to vote. There's 15 members. Maricopa County has 10 members, Pima 4, and Pinal 1. And they each serve 6 years once they're elected, and they are unpaid terms. For this year, we have 5 positions that are up for election, and they all are in Maricopa County. And the board itself, the purpose of the board is to really set the policies for CAPS. So they're responsible for setting the water rates that we pay. And they're also responsible for what's called the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan. And we're in Tier 1 right now, which means that about 512,000 acre foot of water has been decreased from our allocation. And twice a month, they update where everything is with water between the levels that are at Lake Mead and in Lake Pleasant and in the different storage facilities. And they pay really close attention to that, as does all the other states that use Colorado River. And then we report this, and every year we look at what the drought has done and if we need to move in that tier. And this election of these board members is really important because this drought contingency plan was put in place in 2019. And the board members we elect, along with the other members that are serving, will be the ones responsible to renew and revise this plan because it expires in 2026. So for January 2027, we should have a new plan in place. So these individuals are quite important, and we need to make sure they're knowledgeable and have our best interest in place in order to protect our water and to provide it for our state. Next slide, please. Wanted to share with you the candidates that are running, and 4 of the 6 that have committed to running for these 5 board positions are incumbents. And I can share a little bit information about these individuals, and if they have a campaign website, I've provided it here, and you'll get a copy of the slides afterwards so you can look at it in a little bit more detail. Lisa Atkins is an incumbent. She's served since 2020, or I'm sorry, 2003, and she has a history of being a chief of staff for former U.S. Representative Bob Stump, and she served on several other commissions and government entities and has a pretty good understanding of our water and how it is distributed and used in Arizona. Terry Goddard, many of you may recognize that name. He's been serving since 2012. He's a former Arizona attorney general and Phoenix mayor. His history goes decades. He's was aware and working in the area in general when this all became put in place. And I think his father was also on one of the first boards as well. So he's got a pretty deep knowledge, and I've heard him speak on water just personally, and he has a great understanding. And I always walk away with, wow, this is really complicated. And then I remember about 10% and need another reminder soon after. Heather McCree has been a member since 2012 as well. She's actually a water law attorney, though she's not working in that specific area right now. She has served on the board Consumer Service Task Force, and I bring that up because this committee was pretty influential in actually moving the board to be more transparent and working with the community so that they could actually participate with the board meetings, and that included offering live streaming. And they are actually in the process of developing a CAP water education center at their main headquarters, which is near the Deer Valley Airport in Phoenix. For the incumbents, the last one is April Pinger Turnquist, and she is one of the newer members. This is her first renewal for the position. She was elected first in 2019. She has a bachelor's in aerospace engineering and owns an engineering consulting firm. I don't have a lot of other information on her, and she doesn't have a website, but you can read a little bit more on all the incumbents on their board bios on the CAP website. The two new individuals that are running this time, one is Brian Meisenmeyer. He does have a website, so I provided it on this slide. And he's a retired HR and business administrator. A lot of his experience is in California, where he served on city council and had the opportunity to serve on subcommittees about water. It's unclear how long he's been in Arizona, but he has served on a committee with the Scottsdale City Council. Rudy Fisher is the last candidate, and he is also a first-time candidate. He has, let's see, I'm finding him here. I'm sorry, I'm getting them mixed up. The first person I just talked about was Rudy Fisher. Brian is the one that is the environmental engineer and has actually worked for some of the water distribution city plants. So sorry about that. So Rudy is the one that is the administrator. There is a debate scheduled with the Arizona Clean Elections Commission on September 30th for those that are running. Most of these candidates do run what's called clean, but it's unclear if all of them are at this time because not all of them have agreed to participate in the debate. And usually that is a requirement to run clean, but you can go to the website on the slide to see the details, and you can watch it online. Next slide is my conclusion slide. Whoops, didn't come up. Anyway, I just wanted to highlight that In 2024, the board has 5 positions open to vote for, and it will be these will be elected by those voters from Maricopa County. They're responsible for the CAP oversight policies and that new 2027 contingency plan that'll be coming up. And the debate will be on September 30th. Their website is cap-az.com, and there is a lot of information about them and the board and the role and everything you ever wanted to know about the CAP on that website. Any questions? Okay. Thanks. You can put them in the chat if you like.
Cool. Thanks, Pat.
Mhm.
And our last thing we're going to mention is we didn't want to really get into every individual candidate because that would get extensive long. So this is kind of just what kind of policies or things you're looking for your elected officials, maybe things that you want to ask them or search on their website or look in their material, like what policies are we looking for that's going to help with health impacts? So that's kind of what this section is. So if we talk about what kind of things that we can look for in policy, one of the things is stronger regulations on emissions from power plants and industries. So power plants creating energy and industries, things like cement and iron and ammonia used for fertilizers. Those are high fossil fuel consumption energies. So if we can look for alternatives for that and decreasing that emissions, we'll be decreasing the fuel sources and forcing those to be switched over to alternative fuels that will have less of a carbon and greenhouse gas footprint. Another aspect would be then investing in renewable energies. So there are tons of subsidies in the billions of dollars that we give to fossil fuel industries, and we have given as government, we give those over years because we're trying to subsidize that industry to get it up and running and doing good things for the people. Well, the renewable industry needs the same kind of investment. So continuing to tap into wind and solar in the United States, we're just starting to put some of our first offshore wind areas and starting to get permits for that. So that industry hasn't even been tapped into as a source of renewables. So having investments into renewable resources is a big policy component you want to look for. Other things would be supporting energy efficiency upgrades. So whether this is changing your HVAC to a heat pump or getting solar panels or winterizing the house or business. So this is both for homeowners and businesses. So they are using less energy and creating less of a carbon footprint in their day-to-day activities. So this is something that can be done as rebates or incentives, but having a policy component that is increasing energy efficiency for upgrades is a key aspect. And then prioritizing research and development. So you have to put money into carbon storage, electricity storage, climate modeling, new energy techniques, and things that are pro clean energy and tech. So we need investments into that. So making sure that that money is getting funneled into those resources to support those newer industries. And the last kind of policy thing you may want to look for is funding for like climate adaptation. And this is all over the place, right? We have had extreme heat, so we need funding for like our impacts. But how can we maybe decrease that in the state? Well, decreasing our heat island effect would be a great one. So that may include how to make more permeable pavement, rainwater collection, increased green infrastructure, things that we can do in our cities. Maybe we change for the strains on our electrical grid. We change to smart thermometers or change people's work schedules around. Maybe people work later in the day, they work in the evenings or overnight as that's cooler. So as an outdoor worker, I'd have less chance for heat-related illness and coming to the emergency room. Maybe, if you look at on a bigger scale, going from agriculture that's just conventional to more of a regenerative, that uses a lot less fossil fuels and consumption for that. And if we were on a coastal zone management, how to make our cities more resilient for rising sea levels, maybe getting back to mangroves in areas where they need it, protecting, not building right close to the shores. So there's lots of different adaptation techniques that can lead to more resiliency and less vulnerability for Arizona and other areas. So that's something that you want to see in policies. And I think that's it for kind of policies. And I'll put a quick link. We just actually launched yesterday a solutions page on our website. So we are trying to link rebates, energy efficient things that so you can share with other people. Hey, I want to get an electric vehicle. How am I going to do that? Do I get a rebate? Oh, I want to put solar. Is there a rebate? If I want to change my heat pump, get a heat pump. Do I get a rebate for a new water heater that's not gas and now is electric based? So that'll be a link. We're going to keep updating it, some tree programs in different areas. So any questions on kind of policies that you would like to see? Cool. All right. Well, I just want to thank everyone for coming today and being a part of this discussion. Hopefully, we took away that a healthy planet is going to lead to healthy patients, and hopefully we're seeing that relation, and we all are taking steps into better become better advocates. Learning from Ed, I loved his, they're getting data on this. What is the better messaging techniques? Why are we trusted advocates? Because of who we are and what we can do. And so in this election year, hopefully seeing some of these ballot measures that are coming up, the Proposition 139, the Arizona Corporation Commission, which I do think is super important on that one. So just please spread the word on that. And the CAP Water Board and what we're looking for in our officials. These choices, and if we're talking to people about this and bringing this up in conversation, not as a political component, but how we can share with them, this is affecting the health of us, our neighbors, our families, our communities. I think we all want to have clean air, clean water. Those are simple things that we can get on board with, but it's sharing that messaging with others. So thank you again to all our sponsors and all our members. We really appreciate your support for all of this. And, this is from Ayanna Johnson. I think a great takeaway message, like, how do I get involved? This is such a complex problem. It's so overwhelming. I hear this all the time. Climate anxiety is real. Think about what brings you joy. What are you good at and what work do you want to do? Maybe it's switching out napkins from paper to cloth. Maybe it's planting a tree in your neighborhood. Maybe it's just having a discussion with somebody. But find that it's okay. This is a huge topic, as Ed said, and vastly overwhelming at times. Don't feel guilty if you had to drive somewhere with your fossil fuel car. The fact that we're advocating and talking about this is the first step. And then we're going to move the needle and we're going to make a big difference. So thank you all. Hope you can join us. And if there's any other questions, I'll stick around for a little bit, but have a great day.